Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here at Tank12, however you call me, I don't really care. Welcome back to World of Tanks. And yeah, anniversary time, but we're reviewing the Chrysler GF. It's the final, it's one of the final bomb tanks at tier 8 that we're going to be reviewing. The other one is going to be the AMX, which is the French tier 8 premium heavy tank, which will be reviewed in due time. But first we're going to review this, and then we're going to probably head towards some non-premium vehicles in the future so that we can finally have some tech tree lines that we can review, because my plan still holds. I want to be able to review all the vehicles I have in the game. That's quite a lot of them. So before we go into the review though, real quick, there is currently a sale going on because it's the 11th anniversary of World of Tanks NA and EU and Asia. So basically you can get consumables for half price. This is where you can really save a lot of your credits, where you can buy in bulk and you can save a lot. So yeah, keep it in mind. Could be something you might be interested in. And then another thing, a very quick thing, you should maybe, if you go to the depot, there should be a team right here, or like a special kind of airdrop. If you click on top of that, because I've already done that, you don't see it right now, there is like an option where you can choose a team. There's Team Cavalier, which is a British tank. I'm not sure what it is. It's a tier 5, I think. And then an M4 Sherman. You can choose one of the tanks and join one of the teams, and the team actually will then, that you'll be part of, you'll get points by playing the game, I think, and then there are going to be rewards. I don't really know what the rewards are exactly, but definitely join a team, because in the end there are going to be some rewards that they'll be putting out. Also, if you're on Twitch, follow some World of Tanks Twitch accounts. That's where you can get some special missions, if you're interested in any of that kind of stuff. Now, keep in mind, I'm not paid to say any of this, obviously. Just if you want to get some goodies, this is the time where you can get some very nice little add-ons on top of things. So let's take a look. How do you get the Chrysler GF? You're actually getting the Chrysler GF, which is the skinned version. And you can see right here, it costs you 8,000 bonds, and it's one of the few premium heavy tanks in the game, or at least bond premium heavies that you can get. And yes, it's a pretty good vehicle, and it has one or two things up its sleeves. So you can see it's a long tank, and it has its turret at the back. So it's one of those vehicles with a rear situated turret. That means it's great for side scraping, and the armor profile is also going to add on top of that, because the armor on this tank is really great. Now, if we talk about the skin, I think the skin itself is nothing special. It's just a tank painted in black, and it has a logo, the wargaming.net crest on top of it. Like the wargaming.net league doesn't exist anymore, so it's kind of a remnant of long past esports aspirations for World of Tanks. Who would have thought that Wargaming or World of Tanks esports wouldn't work out with all that garbage premium shit that's going on? But enough of that. Let's take a look at this vehicle. So firepower wise, you have a 105mm gun, and to be fair, this is one of the probably most lackluster parts of this vehicle, because you'll see firepower with this vehicle is not as amazing as you'd expect it to be. Always keep in mind, I have a very good crew. I have equipment here. I have already used the right kind of field modifications to make this tank more competitive for myself. So the stats in here are going to be a bit different. So we're just going to go with the gun for now. You have a 105mm gun with 320 millimeters of penetration. No alpha damage, excuse me. And the AP shells, which are your standard shells, they have 198 millimeters of pen. That's about the same as the T32. I think the T32 might even have better pen now, but that used to be the T32 pen. And at tier 8, tier 9, and tier 10, 198, usually for a heavy tank, is not very good anymore. Quite lackluster, but that's why you have the APCR shells. You can see the APCR shells have 260 millimeters of penetration, and their shell velocity is 1,181. That's not the best. That's not very good for an APCR shell, but at the same time, That's definitely better than the 950 meters that you have with the AP shells. You also have high explosive shells right here, which have 53 millimeters of pen, but obviously when you're fighting against a Scorpion G or something like that, it's always going to be coming in handy. Also, one of the things that is really coming in handy with this vehicle, as you can see, you are carrying 100 rounds with this vehicle. Basically, you're not going to be running out of ammo. You're not going to have that problem. So you can stack up on the high explosive shells. You can stack up on the APCR shells if you really want to. And you can just stack up on the AP shells. So the gun loading time would be on standard 10.1 seconds. You can see I pushed that down quite a bit. And the rate of fire would be like 6 rounds per minute. I have it currently at 8.15 rounds per minute. Now, the gun characteristics, at least accuracy-wise and aiming time-wise, both fairly decent. This tank is accurate enough, as you can see, and the aim time is very good. One of the main downsides to this gun, though, or to this tank, is it has only 6 degrees of gun depression, and that is all around the vehicle, not just at the front. Now, if you have a hull-down vehicle with a rear-face turret, obviously gun depression at the front is going to be difficult, but only having 6 degrees on the side where you can actually lower your gun more, that is also quite bad. So very much lacking the gun depression. Fighting in hilly terrain is going to be very difficult. Then also, gun traverse speed is only 25.6 degrees per second. You're not going to be able to turn your turret around very quickly. It's a heavy tank. You have to keep in mind that it's not going to be turning very fast. But let's get to the very good part of this vehicle. It has a lot of armor at the front. 152 millimeters at the front, 102 on the side, 76 at the rear, 254 on the turret at the front, 127 on the side, 89 on the rear, and you only have this one cupola, which is a very aggressively protruding cupola, I'd say, for at least other tanks. But this one actually is quite nicely angled, and it's quite difficult to pen. That means that this tank is actually quite good. It's very nicely armored at the front and at the upper part of the turret as well. Because the turret is situated so far in the back, if you are like kind of below it, it becomes quite difficult to actually shoot that and hit that part right there if he's hiding his lower plate somewhere. The obvious weak spot is the lower plate. It's a very big square or rectangle. That was probably the more accurate term. It's a very large rectangle, but the thing is, if you can hide it, your tank basically is invincible from the front. At least if you're playing at tier 8 or even below, and sometimes even tier 9, because the armor is really that great. It's very nicely angled. As you can see, the angle is like very uncomfortable. You'd have to be right in front of the tank to be able to shoot down into the hull to be able to pen it, or yeah, you have to load heat and you have to have a lot of pen to be able to go past this armor. This is the main argument, or the main buying argument for this vehicle, to buy it and to get it into some kind of city battle where you can just go side scrape on a building and then you can just fire and bounce on the side, because 102 millimeters on the side is really great. That is going to be auto ricochet for a lot of shots. So yeah, that is the main part why people want this tank. That is what makes it so good. One other part which adds on top of the already very decent survivability is that this tank has very good engine power. This is a tank that goes top speed 35 kilometers, right? I have turbo on it, but I'm going to talk about the equipment in a second. 39 kilometers per hour top speed. That is with the turbo, that's quite decent, but specific power to weight ratio, look at that, 21.32 horsepower per ton. You can see this tank weighs almost 70 tons fully loaded. You have 1,290 horsepower, 1,200 horsepower. That means this thing is going to accelerate very quickly. You're going to reach a top speed of like 35 kilometers in no time. So if you have a turbo on top of that, and even a Bond turbo, you can get this thing up to 40 kilometers per hour with specific power to weight ratio of maybe even 22 horsepower per ton. That is really good. The reverse speed is not very good, 16 kilometers per hour top speed going backwards. That's going to be a bit of a thing that's going to be affecting you, but the traverse speed right here with 36.03 is decent enough. Now, obviously, you can change it around. You can make the tank more mobile with, you know, other things to make it be able to turn itself faster. And you can see also that suspension repair time is very important. That's why I definitely went with that. Have repair skill on your crew, because you want to be able to repair your tracks very, very quickly if someone is pushing you, because you do not want to get surrounded by several tanks. You don't want to be able to have to turn your tank, because the turret turns very slowly. Concealment wise, it's a heavy tank. It doesn't have any stats in that regard, so I'd say it's probably you don't really have to look into it. Spotting wise, the tank has not the best view range. 380 meters base view range for tier 8 heavy is okay, I guess. And you can see I'm only at 411 because I didn't really train the view range skill on my T32 crew, which is playing on this tank. And yeah, generally speaking, it's not the best at spotting things. So to real fast get everything back together real quick. Firepower on this tank is, at least gun handling is great. The pen, not so much. Gun depression is not very good. Survivability is great. It's top notch if you can really side scrape. If you like side scraping, this is the tank for you. I'm already gonna say it. Mobility wise, this tank is great. It has not the best top speed, so you're gonna reach at 35 kilometers per hour top speed really quickly, but you have great engine power, so that means you accelerate very quickly. You're really fast. This tank just feels faster than it actually is. So let's go over to the field modifications and the the final equipment pieces that I've chosen. So basically, for this vehicle, what I actually did is you either have the lightweight suspension or you have the all-terrain suspension, and the question right here is I have to actually rethink this real quick, because you either get changes to the hull traverse speed, which gives you plus 5%, or plus 10% on suspension durability. Now, the hull traverse speed plus 5%, you can see the mobility on the hull traverse is at 36.0803 traverse per second, so I think that's okay. I can deal with that. But having minus 7% top speed, like to maintaining speed, I'd rather have the plus 7% at keeping the top speed than have the minus 7%, even though the specific power to weight ratio is really great. But I think that the traverse speed of 36.03 for me is going to work out fine. At least I haven't had any problems, and I just want to keep the top speed when the top speed is only 39 kilometers per hour. And I want to be able to keep at that level as long as I can to be able to go to places as fast as I can. That's the reason why I chose that. Then obviously parallax adjustment, decrease the aiming circle. That should be your main goal, to get the accuracy down to as close to 0.3 as you can get. And then the periscope electric device to give me more view range. Just get that 3% additional view range. I know it's a heavy tank. I know that if you use the sound insulation, you get a minus 10% on stun damage. Right now we have a plus 10 and plus 15% on additional stun. But to be fair, I don't really care too much about stun. I usually use my my medkit anyway. I always use my medkit very aggressively when I play heavy tanks, so it doesn't really bother me too much. But if you really dislike artillery, you can obviously do that as well and choose that. But for equipment, I went for additional HP, improved hardening, which decreases the time of repair speed, and which also gives you more HP and better suspension durability, better repair speed, as I mentioned, load capacity, hull damage by suspension damage impact. What was it? To hull damage caused by suspension damage during impact. So if somebody rushes you and drives into you, you're not going to take as much damage. Or if you want to rush somebody. Now, vertical stabilizer is something I wouldn't recommend in this tank, because vertical stabilizer on this tank is not needed. I think the the stats is something on the move 0.10, so it's really good. Like, the dispersion is really, really good on this tank. You don't really need it. Then I went for gun rammer. I want to do more damage. I want to have the best DPM I can possibly have. 2,357, also with a little directive, because I have tons of them lying around. You could also go for improved ventilation, which would increase the spotting, which would also increase the traverse speed. It would increase the aim time a little bit, but I just went for the gun rammer because I'm happy with that. Now also, there's a possibility to use improved rotation mechanism. This will allow you to keep your tank always in front of the vehicle that is trying to traverse you. So if you don't want the gun rammer, you can also go with the improved rotation mechanism, which will allow you to turn your tank a lot faster. I'm gonna actually, I have enough credits right there. I haven't played with it, but I'm pretty sure that if you use the improved rotation mechanism on the firepower slot, you're gonna be able to turn your tank faster, and you're gonna be able to not get outturned very quickly. I think that might even be worth it more. So I'm just gonna take out the gun rammer real quick, because even 2,000 DPM is still decent enough, even though I lost about 400 DPM almost right there. Now if we take that out, and I'm just going to, no, I don't want to buy more. I want to discard this one right here. So we've taken it away, and now you can see the mobility. You have traverse speed of 40.54 degrees per second. That's really good. And gun traverse is 28.8, which is definitely going to be much better than prior. So this is probably the loadout that I would run nowadays. And also I would go with the turbocharger, because you're a lot better. You're much more mobile, because you also get like the engine power on top of that, like the boost. And you have the additional 4 kilometers per hour top speed, which is really, really big. So if you have the Bond equipment, like the Bounty turbocharger right here, where you can get 5 kilometers per hour top speed and the 12% engine power boost, that is something that is going to really, really give you even a bigger edge on this tank. So I think, having talked about this vehicle now for a little bit, what does it look like in battle, and would I really recommend it? Let's go forward and see how it really does. Okay, so it was a bit of a difficult choice of picking the right gameplay, because I think it would be unfair to only show one side, and that is playing against tier 6 and 7 tanks, because this is the game that we're going to look at first, and then the other one where we're going up against some tier 10 tanks. I want to show you guys the limitations of this vehicle, because obviously in a scenario where you're going up against tier 7 tanks with 152 millimeters of armor at the front with a nice angle, I don't think that you need to be a genius to know what's going to be happening, that you're going to be eating these guys up for breakfast. And that is why, like, one of the main reasons why I think this is a bit of an unfulfilling tank to play, because it is extremely powerful in one scenario against these tier 7 tanks and tier 8s, but as soon as you go into those tier 9, tier 10 matches, the tide does start to change, and things do change very quickly. And yeah, it's still a very powerful tank, even at tier 9 and 10 with the frontal armor that it has, but it doesn't really have the teeth anymore that it has in this matchup. Like at tier 8 and tier 7, having only 198 millimeters of penetration is not the worst thing to have, but not being able to pen anything at tier 9 and 10 because you only have 198, or having to resort to premium ammunition with 263 millimeters of pen, well, it kind of is not a very enjoyable experience, at least in my mind it is. But we still have to talk about the fact that this is a very capable machine, the fact that this tank is, mobile enough to keep up with other heavy tanks, because it just has the horsepower to weight ratio, and it has the armor to withstand basically a lot of punishment from the enemy team. So right here you can see we're going up against another Chrysler K. It's not the GF version this time around. Basically, what you're going to be doing with this tank a lot of the time is you're going to be side scraping, just like we are. And it's a bit awkward because we both have a lot of armor, we both have very bad pens, so I decide to just screw it already and switch over to APCR ammunition. But since the gun handling is so good on this tank, you don't really have to aim too long because it does work. You can see I'm just scared of getting hit by this Chrysler K, because he has more protection in front of him instead of just having the the ability to angle like I was doing. He also has a little bit of a rock in front of him. It's a very weird dance, a very weird kind of engagement, one that is not a lot of fun, and it's just one that you'll find happening over and over again when you're playing this this tank, because you're trying to side scrape and you're trying to hit like weak spots because your gun is not that great, and the enemy team or the enemy player is going to try to do exactly the same. And if you overextend and you don't pay attention at all, you just want to move out there because your turret is situated that far in the back, this is what will happen. You'll get penned by the Carnarvon and the Pavlok. They'll just put one through your side armor. But as soon as you you kind of place your tank in the right direction again, you basically have nothing to worry about, because these guys right there, what are they supposed to do? The only tank that could possibly damage me is the KV2 with a high explosive shell, but even now, because of the HE nerf, this KV2 is probably not going to do a whole bunch of damage to me. Other than that, for me, obviously, it's a lot of fun. I get to shoot these guys, do a lot of damage, you know. I have decent DPM. I can just fire, and it doesn't really matter. I have enough ammunition lying around, and I don't have to really be worried about these guys shooting me or penning me. So, having seen that now, you can see that being in a tier 8, tier 7 match, or even a tier 6 match, as you can see right here, this is a very, very good tank. It's very powerful. It has enough pen, it has enough mobility, it has enough armor to just stand there and sit out in the open. And even if they hit the lower plate, I don't think they're going to be able to pen me unless they really have great APCR or premium ammunition penetration. Other than that, they're going to have a really bad time. So right there we track the SC100Y. We do a massive 780 or get a massive 780 assistance damage with that shot. You can see even at distance, this tank is fairly accurate, and it does do a lot of work. And you can see the reload time, not the worst in the world. And now we have to move on over and get into the fishbowl, because the enemy team has decided to actually return and fall back to the fishbowl. And you can see that the power to weight ratio on this tank is amazing. 35 kilometers per hour top speed. We reach it basically the entire time, and we even go above it all the way to 39 kilometers per hour top speed because of the turbo. And that's like really, really great. But even though the power to weight ratio is great, you do not have more than 39 kilometers per hour or 40 kilometers per hour. But I think that's probably the best thing, that it doesn't have more, because then it probably would be very, very powerful, and probably more powerful or more overpowered than it is right now in these tier 7, tier 8 engagements. So we ate up the T29, and now it's all about the E25, and this is where you find out that it's a bit awkward to play this vehicle sometimes. We ram the E25, but we don't do enough damage, and now he has the speed. We don't have the gun depression because it's only 6 degrees on the side and on the rear and at the front, and now he's kind of side hugging us, and we'll have to really turn our tank, turn, and it's really awkward. I'm trying to ram him, he's staying behind me. He ammo wrecks me with the first shot, and then he kills himself by ramming me again by going in there too fast. But yeah, as you can see right here, about 3,722 damage dealt. There is the ISU 152. He knocks us out with an APCR shell to the side, and 1,632 damage assisted. So yeah, in a tier 7 engagement, in a setting like this, you don't really have to worry about anything. What about tier 9 and 10? What if you are the lowest tier in the match? How well does this tank fare then? So, what does it look like when you go up against Chieftains, Bad Chats, Amex M4s, 51s, and AML2s? Well, it depends on what kind of map you are on. Is there cover? Where do you go? Do you have support by your team, or are you all by yourself? Now, as you can see right here, we are on Malinovka, and we're playing with a mouse. We have a TVP, we have a UDES 1516 right here. So yeah, a very difficult kind of setup for us to be really successful in, because we have to go up against quite a bit of armor. I'm just going to speed it up because it's going to take a bit of time for us to reach the hill, because that's the place where we're going to be going. At least you can see, mobility wise, we have the engine power to get us up here, and we are fast enough to reach this position and help out our, I'm not even sure what kind of tank it is. It must be the UDES. No, it's the WZ, who has rushed ahead and went into this position. Now with 2 artillery pieces, it's a bit of an awkward engagement, but we fortunately we managed to penetrate the Centurion through the turret, and we knock him out, because he was a tank that we certainly didn't want to have a fight with for a long time, because his turret armor is decent enough and our pen is not good enough usually to deal with him, and at the same time he's just going to be a very annoying nuisance right there. But one of the things that you can expect of this tank is that you're going to be fired at by artillery a lot. Artillery loves this tank because, generally speaking, this vehicle just is a huge target. It's very easy to hit, and yeah, being in this position is basically the only place where we can be safe from these guys, at least from the front, because we have a little bit of armor at the front and on the side, so we can side scrape around this windmill, which is quite nice to do. We're also racking up quite a lot of assistance damage right here. We're trying to put some pressure on the AMX M451, and you can see that with the APCR ammunition that you have, the 263mm of pen, even though by standards of tier 10 that's about the standard pen, you're still going to be able to do quite a bit of work. Now, I'm really worried about that AML2 though. If he's firing heat, he's going to be able to pen my side if he aims at the right spots. Unfortunately for me, he does manage to find the spot with the second shot, but the third one and the first one, they both do bounce. You can see that the armor on this vehicle really does stack up. It holds up in these situations when you can side scrape. Also, this must be a chieftain player who is not very experienced, because he has made quite a lot of mistakes so far up here on the hill, and he's just about to get knocked out either by me or by artillery. No, by the mouse, which is also fine by me. So, yeah, one of the strengths of this tank really is the armor, especially the turret armor. The turret armor is very trollish, especially for anyone trying to shoot the cupola, because sometimes when you're just moving a little bit, the cupola becomes almost impossible to hit, and sometimes the cupola just bounces. It even bounces like 200 or 300 millimeters pen of heat, and now I'm just trying I'm trying to aim in and snipe the ML2. But yeah, you could see that even in tier 9 and tier 10 experience, in the right position with a little bit of protection in front of you, this tank will do just fine. It is an RD magnet though, so you can see like almost the majority of the damage has been done by artillery so far, and it's something you have to get used to, especially on these open maps. So if you're on an open map, I don't know, just try to go somewhere where you have a little bit of cover, some rocks, because it really is going to make a big difference when you're playing a vehicle such as this. At least you have the mobility to get from point A to B. So I think we can already start with the final verdict, and my final verdict might surprise you guys a little bit, because it's not going to be as extremely positive as it probably should be. The tank itself is a great platform. This is a great vehicle that does a lot of damage at tier 7. It does enough damage at tier 8 and 9 to still be quite good. And even at tier 10, you can still be some help to your team, even if you are just the one that is eating shells. But to be fair, the vehicle itself, I think, is a very unsatisfying experience. It's a very boring tank to play. Why is it a boring tank to play? Simple, because at tier 7 and below, tier 8, it's very difficult to pen this tank if it's in the right position. You just pick up a spot, you hide your lower plate, and you basically just try to snipe the weak spot of the enemy team. And that has been like the hull down meta for World of Tanks for a very long time. And this tank lives this hull down meta. And it also has the side scraping ability, which is quite nice. It's a bit different from the usual ways you play or side scrape vehicles because the turret is at the back. But it's another very fulfilling gameplay style, at least in my opinion. So I think this is one of the reasons why I don't really like to play this tank, and I don't really want to recommend it. But from a neutral perspective, this is a really good tank. For 8,000 bonds, this is a vehicle that will get the job done. This is a tank that even new players might be able to, that new players will get a hold of very quickly, because all you have to do is you have to hide your lower plate, you have to point your front towards the enemy, and you'll bounce a lot of shots. Your turret is going to auto bounce a lot of shots. Your gun is going to be one of the biggest problems that you have, the lack of pen. But if you're able and willing to spend credits on APCR ammunition, you can do that just fine. And basically, yeah, this tank is still a decent buy for 8,000 bonds. It's one of the best vehicles you can get out of the bond shop, and it will definitely make you a lot of credits. Which, if you are looking for a lot of credits, this is a tank that will make a lot of credits. But if you have to fire a lot of premium shells, those credits will probably burn through very quickly again. But other than that, it's just a boring tank to play. And I think it best should have never been released to the public, because if you have a Chrysler GF somewhere in a hull down position behind a building where only turret is sticking out, and you can't even hit the cupola because he's hiding his right side of the turret behind a building, it's like one of the worst things. You can't even hurt anything on the tank with high explosive because it has so much armor, and high explosive has been banned. So yeah, not a very fulfilling tank to play for the players that really want to have a challenge. I think other than that, good tank, great platform, just shouldn't be a part of the game. So, if you guys like this review, as always, comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Until then, have a good one, and have a great weekend.